introduce David Cicilline. He's a member of the Progressive Caucus. He's on the Foreign Affairs Committee. He's a member of the House, of the Democratic House leadership. And we can't wait to hear from you about what it's like today, what's going on the floor right now, and what are you going to do? What are your priorities for the next 2 years? Thank you so much for joining us.
You should all feel badly for me that I have to follow Dior in that beautiful presentation. So I'm really here to say thank you to all of you for the work that you did in your communities and all across the country to make sure that we restore some sanity to America and that we begin to really repair the damage that this administration has done to our standing in the world. You know, I serve on the Foreign Affairs and Judiciary Committees, and we spend a lot of time and a lot of resources promoting democracy and human rights all over the world. And our leadership in that regard has been significantly diminished by this administration, this president, that are undermining the basic institutions of this country and have diminished our ability to promote democracy and human rights around the world. And we're going to feel the consequences of that damage for a long time, unfortunately. But today is the beginning of the end of that kind of unchecked authority by this administration. Because although the American people gave Democrats the House on a commitment to make sure people have access to quality health care, to make sure that we do everything we can to raise family incomes, and we take on the pervasive corruption in this town and get government working for the people of this country again, they also expect us to do our job and hold this administration accountable and demand that we have significant and real oversight. For the last 2 years on the Judiciary Committee, the committee has basically abandoned its responsibilities to hold this administration accountable. And as if they have, every day begun to really undo what has made this country strong and great and the envy of the world, we sat there silently because our Republican colleagues were unwilling in any meaningful way to hold this president and this administration accountable. Yeah. That ended today. Yeah. So I just want to say thank you. Our work begins today. It didn't end when we were sworn in and took the majority. Our work begins today, and we need you to be partners with us and push us and make sure we get it done for the American people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congressman, for joining us. And
now I'm going to sing my next thing. No. Do not want that.
Many of us here are big fans of the CPC, of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and we were discussing the main things that our crowd here, things that we're excited about. We have it on like a laundry list there on things that we're excited about. We'd love to hear from you, not only what you're excited about, but what are your top priorities for the new Congress?
So I want to just talk about two things in particular from that list. One is I was a founding member of Mayors Against Illegal Guns when I was mayor of Providence. Yes! Was Mayor Menino, Mayor Bluebird, and then I worked on that previously when I was in the state legislature. I'm the author of the assault weapons ban in the House, and the ban on bump stocks, and a number of other really common sense proposals. One of my priorities is to be certain that we take some serious action to reduce gun violence in this country. We have a gun violence epidemic. The idea that we're powerless to do anything about it is completely wrong. We have the ability to substantially reduce gun violence in this country. And while there's no single bill or no suite of bills that's going to eliminate gun violence in its entirety, that does not mean that we should not do everything we can to reduce it as much as we can. There's a lot we can do. We have dozens of bills, really good ones, and I hope we will make it a priority. I know we will, to move forward on some proposals to reduce gun violence in a serious way in this country. Get weapons of war, these assault weapons, out of the neighborhoods of our communities once and for all. The second one I want to mention, which is not on there, but I know it's important, and that is I'm the author of the Equality Act, which is a piece of legislation that prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And housing, employment, public accommodations, jury service, federal funding, education. It's a fully inclusive civil rights bill, and the only way we can achieve full equality for our community in all walks of life is to add those two terms, sexual orientation and gender identity, to the existing civil rights architecture. When I introduced the bill last Congress, we had 198 co-sponsors. Every single member of the Democratic caucus, with the exception of 2 and 2 Republicans. We're going to reintroduce that bill, and the House is going to pass the Equality Act, and we're going to end discrimination against members of the LGBT community in this country once and for all. So those are just 2 of that list. Yeah, of course.
So we will open it up.
Maybe for like poetry and songs, not speeches. But he's making me say this, not my choice.
So let's have a couple of questions from the floor.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I'm not sure, sorry.
Yes, I'd like to know HR 51 will be introduced on Friday.
Yeah.
For DC statehood, and I want to know, are you a current co-sponsor of the
Yes.
statehood legislation? Okay.
Yes.
You vote that.
I was last Congress, and I will be again. Happy.
Hi, thank you for being here. I have a question too with regards to ending gun violence. Are you amenable to viewing this as a holistically, so that would include police brutality, and also when we talk about gun violence and gun violence reform, like how are we going to ensure that the policies we pass don't have a disproportionate impact on Black people in inner cities, especially because right now, as it is, white people are happily enjoy their Second Amendment rights, and Black people aren't treated equally with regards to guns.
No, it's a really important. And I think we have to address the issue of gun violence and violence in all its forms, including obviously police brutality. So the answer to that is yes. I think one of the best ways to make sure that things that we pass work in the way we expect them to is to monitor them, to be sure that we have included in legislation reporting requirements, the presentation of reports to Congress, so that we have mechanisms to force us to regularly look at the efficacy of what we're doing. So I think you're absolutely right. And I think very often when we talk about gun violence, there's a lot of response to mass killings because there are great numbers of people in a single incident. But the truth is, there are victims of gun violence every single day in cities all across this country of people who weren't part of a mass shooting who we never mention. And so we've got to deal with gun violence in that context as well. My colleague Robin Kelly from Illinois is a great champion of reminding everybody after every mass shooting, like, this goes on with great frequency in my community, and we shouldn't only be looking at mass shootings, we should be looking at gun violence broadly, and I think she's absolutely right.
Can you raise your hand if you have questions?
Hi, my name is Martin Moulton. I just want to echo Anise, but could you ask leadership, Nancy Pelosi, to talk about DC statehood? My other question is, can progressive Democrats please endorse and support the decriminalization of sex work, which affects poor women, LGBTQs, men, all across the spectrum? These people have abandoned all their lives and doing something most of them only engage in temporarily.
Sure. I do think the Progressive Caucus, and I want to acknowledge Pramila Jayapal and Mark Pocan, who are the 2 co-chairs. I'm a vice chair, but I do think the Progressive Caucus has a special responsibility and will continue to kind of press our leadership to move forward on a number of issues, some of which you just raised. But yeah, we don't always get to tell the speaker what to say, but I get your point. Raising these issues, in particular on stage, is really important, and I agree with you.
Thank you, Congressman, for being here. You mentioned the Equality Act.
Yes.
Would that essentially also incorporate the never yet passed Equal Rights Amendment? I mean, essentially, would that, include gender as opposed to simply gender identity?
Yeah, so I'm an original co-sponsor of the Equal Rights Amendment as well. I think Carolyn Maloney would not like it if we took the Equal Rights Amendment and put it into the Equality Act. So that is a separate piece of legislation. My expectation is we'll move forward on that as well. But it's, there is one place where we add gender which it doesn't exist in the current law. I think it's in public accommodations, where discrimination based on gender is not currently in the law, so we do actually add that. The Equal Rights Amendment, I know Carolyn Maloney has sort of led the effort, and I don't know that she would want to put it in the Equality Act. I mean, I'll talk to her about it. It's a kind of interesting idea. But I think she... Yeah. No, that was her question. No, I agree with you. I think they're separate things, but she was asking, is there some consideration of putting them in a single piece of legislation? And I think the answer is probably not.
Should we get one more?
We have a question up here. Phyllis has a question.
Oh, yes.
One more question. Thanks, Congressman, for joining us tonight. This is fantastic. The question about foreign policy. The Progressive Caucus in the past has not been as consistent as we would hope on a lot of war questions. I know that you have been a strong advocate of ending the U.S. war in Yemen, which is fantastic. What can you suggest that we can do to push not only members of the Progressive Caucus that may be waffling, but in general, what can we do to make that so urgent issue even more urgent and even faster in coming up for a vote, to stop arms sales to Saudi Arabia, to stop participating with the Saudis in the UAE, to stop this collaboration with these horrifying regimes?
Yes.
What can we do?
I do think, there's going to be an opportunity on the Foreign Affairs Committee in the majority where we're going to really be the only place that can promote a different foreign policy. I mean, it won't happen in the Republican-controlled Senate Foreign Affairs Committee. It obviously is not happening with this administration. So I do think that the Foreign Affairs Committee has a real opportunity and obligation to do that. So I think, the Progressive Caucus, I think you're right, has not played as active a role in this space as we should. It's more urgent now than ever. I think just making sure that when you're talking to members of Congress about that whole list of issues, that you be certain that you raise the importance of issues that relate to foreign policy, because I think just they don't hear about it as much from the progressive community as the issues that are sort of more domestic. So I think just talking to members of Congress and helping them understand you see this as you should, a progressive issue about progressive values, about our leadership in the world, and I think that would be very helpful. Thank you all. Enjoy tonight. Hope I'm your last speaker.
I think we had two more questions. Can you raise your hand if you had a question? So we have one over here. So if you don't mind, we'll do these three.
Okay.
Allie?
1 second, where's this going?
You can start right there where you are. No. Right there.
Thank you, Congressman. My name is Sajid.
Can you hold it close to your mouth?
My name is Sajid. I've lived in the Middle East for many years, and I'm a US citizen. I work with my wife.
Yeah, we can't hear you. It's closer to loud.
Can anyone hear it?
Loud.
I would like to know about establishing democracy in Saudi Arabia, a country that has killed thousands of Yemenis, killing their own citizens, no religious freedom, no press freedom, no human rights, where women need permission from men for applying passports, buy a house, and of course we should not forget the 911 where 70 hijackers were Saudi nationals. Still, USC, Saudi as their friend and ally. Will there be any change in policy you can bring in to punish Saudi Arabia and give them justice and make the world a more peaceful and
Yeah, so I don't know if everyone could hear the question, but it's a question which raises the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia, and a country that does not share our values in very fundamental ways, that is responsible for unspeakable violence in Yemen and the recent murder of journalist Khashoggi, and the list goes on and on. I think there is a lot more we can be doing, and I think you can expect and should expect the House Foreign Affairs Committee to take action with respect to the relationship and imposing sanctions, as well as requiring a thorough review of the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia, military sales, and all aspects of our relationship. It cannot be that the President of the United States sits before an audience of the world and says, well, I know there's, it might be they killed the journalist, maybe he didn't, but they sell us, we sell them weapons. I mean, you talk about in one sentence undermining core American values and our moral leadership in the world. I mean, to me, that was one of the most sickening things I've ever witnessed. And we are in the majority now, and we have a responsibility to take action, so I agree with you 100%.
Also, it'd be good if you don't have foreign policy questions, because we have another speaker going to speak about foreign policy.
My name is Michael Beer from Arlington, Virginia. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I know you have a busy day, but it means a lot to us. I think almost all of us are really, really worried about the tremendous corruption here in Washington and the corruption of big money. And we hear lots of words every 2 years from various politicians saying, oh, we're going to get corruption and big money out of politics. What are the priorities? What's going to get done? How are we going to get corporations out of Congress and get our Congress back?
Well, I mean, first of all, I agree with you. In fact, when we put together the kind of agenda for House Democrats, I was a co-chair of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee with Hakeem Jeffries, Sherry Boosters, and I, we identified this issue of getting government working for the people of this country again and the corrupting influence of money as the #1 priority. In fact, people really understand that Washington is not working for them. And they're right, it's not working for them. It's working for the powerful special interests, the big lobbyists, and the big money. And people know that. And you poll it anywhere in the country and they know this place is broken and it's not working for them, but it's working. It's just not working for them. And so one of the reasons we're doing H.R. 1 first is because we really understand as House Democrats that if we don't fix this, the chance of us driving down prescription drug prices and raising family incomes and all the other priorities will not happen if we don't fix the system. And so it includes some really bold ideas about ways to refund, financing public financing. Some very bold ideas. My bill, the Disclose Act, so we know where this money is coming from. We need to eventually pass a constitutional amendment to get rid of Citizens United. There are a number of us like me who have taken a pledge not to accept corporate PAC money. I did that in my campaign because I think we've got to set some kind of example in this. But you are absolutely right. If there is one big problem we have in this country, it's that corporations have too much power in this town. Yes. They write the laws, they write the regulations, and they serve their interests. You look at the income inequality in this country, it's not by accident, it's by design. It's because of the lobbyists who wrote those laws work for the big multinational corporations. We know this, so we just need to fix it, and we need to have the courage to change the system, even if it means it makes it harder for you as an individual candidate to run, because you have to have confidence that the American people will support the change and they'll figure out other ways to be helpful to you in your election. But we have got to get to this issue. If we don't fix this, the chances of us fisting the rest of the stuff, I think, are really small. So I agree with you 100%.
Let's take one last question before we say thank you to the Congressman.
David, not foreign policy.
Well, I'm sorry, I want to ask one anyway. And it's about the fear of Israel, criticizing Israel. You have a slaughter continuing in Gaza of peaceful demonstrators. You have people actually have the nerve to insist on loyalty or supporting Israel in different states. When are we going to get independent of foreign lobbies, whether it's the Greek lobby, Turkish lobby, or whatever? When are we going to have real support for Americans and stand up against any government that has segregation like Israel? When are we going to get away from this hypocrisy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can't speak for others. I have been critical of policies that Israel has put forth. I've been clear about that. I do think it's another example of where we need to reform our system so the kind of influence of money in our elections doesn't produce those kinds of results. We need to have a foreign policy that reflects our values, and we need to have elections where people decided and not these powerful special interests and big lobbyists and big money. I think fixing the way we run elections, that we finance elections, that we draw district lines, all of that will go a long way to restoring democracy in this country. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Let's give a big hand to Congressman Cicilline. Thank you so much for joining us.